Hi, welcome back to another Crypto Day video. So today I've got something a little bit different. I've actually got Rolf Versluis from Horizon. He was one of the co-founders of Horizon, and he's been kind enough to join me on the channel to talk a little bit more detail about his background in crypto, about the Horizon project, and in more detail about their new side chains, which they're launching at the moment. So we go over various bits and pieces during the interview. It's about half an hour long, so a little bit longer than normal. But if you stick around towards the end, we also then go into a little bit of talk about what we think the markets in general are going to be doing next year and other projects that we are interested in and that we think have potential. So I hope you enjoy the interview. I've put links to all the relevant sites down below in the description, but please feel free to reach out in the comments. Always nice to hear from you. So let me know if you have other questions that you might like answered, and hopefully somebody from Horizon might be able to jump in with any kind of answers that you might be seeking. But anyway, I shall leave you now with the video. Hi Rolf, thanks very much for joining me today. As I just mentioned in the kind of intro, you are working for Horizon currently. Do you want to just start by giving us a little bit of a background as to your sort of like background in kind of crypto, how you got into it, and then how you kind of made the move, or the kind of like, found out more about Horizon?
Yeah, Dave, sure. Be happy to do that. Like a lot of people, I'd been keeping track of Bitcoin and other crypto and was looking for the right time and way to get into it. For me, my background is as an engineer. So I went to Annapolis, the Naval Academy, got my electrical engineering degree there, went into the Navy nuclear program, and was an officer in the Navy on fast attack submarines.
Wow.
In the UK, they call those hunter killers. And that was out of Hawaii. And did that for a few years, then got into the industry, into industry, first the semiconductor industry, and then worked for Cisco Systems, the big networking company. Then left Cisco, started my own information technology data networking company, grew that from a startup to 60 people over a little more than a decade, and then we sold that business in 2015. And although I was interested in getting into crypto because I like new technologies, I like discovering and learning new things and succeeding in the space and teaching people about all that kind of stuff, didn't have time when I was running a business.
Absolutely. I know how that feels, yeah.
Yeah. And so really didn't have time until about 2015. And that was in a bear market. I didn't know much about the Bitcoin market and how the price compared to the dollar and the pound really changes the way that people act. And I couldn't figure out how to make money in it. I like to make money when I get into a new industry, so that's always helpful. And for my background, the easiest thing to do is mining. So I understand electrical and power, so the power, the cooling, the data networking, all that kind of stuff. So mining seemed a natural fit for me. And fortunately, here where we live in the United States, in Georgia, the electricity is fairly inexpensive, and it's not too hot, not too cold. So got a little bit of luck there. So I started with mining Bitcoin, and then progressed to mining other things over the next year. So that I was again lucky to start in late 2015. Because mining was actually profitable then. All the people that had been mining for years had gone out of business, basically. And there was a new generation of equipment that was coming on board. And so I was fortunate in that.
So when you were kind of mining, you started with kind of ASICs and stuff like that then?
Yeah, so I started with a ASIC miner. And then, because that was easiest for me to just plug in and get going. But then I switched over to GPU mining because that was more exciting to me. Because you could learn about new projects and analyze the teams and figure them out and see which one was going to be good. And so I became very interested in the GPU mining, specifically for the privacy space. And so got involved early in mining Zcash and then the spinoff of that Z Classic. And that was going okay. And I thought there was good future in both projects. Like a lot of people that are in the crypto space, I see everything that's coming. I see all the changes that are going to happen, but then I don't understand the time frame that those changes are going to take place over. So I'm like, gosh, everybody's going to see that obviously cryptocurrency is, Bitcoin is and the cryptocurrency is the money of the future. And obviously everybody's going to want to have private payments. So this is going to switch over here in the next few years. Well, it's going to switch over the next few decades for everybody. But for people that are going against the grain, it's very easy to get excited about something new, finding a new system, and then maybe the pendulum swings perhaps a little too far into the excitement and involvement. So I'm not saying it swung too far. I'm just saying that the ideas that we had in starting Horizen were perfectly valid then. They're perfectly valid now. It's just we've recognized over the last few years it's going to take many years of hard work to achieve the vision that we have. And that vision is going to evolve over time. And it's going to, as we progress, we're going to have a lot of people that join us and some that leave. And it's going to be okay because overall we're going to be successful.
So Horizen actually was launched in 2017, wasn't it? So
it was
sort of just before really the kind of peak of the kind of bull market at the tail end of that year. And for those who don't know, it was a fork from Zcash, which forked into Zclassic, is that correct? And then Zencash, as it was known then, forked from Zclassic.
Yeah, I don't want to be pedantic about it, but the quite specific way that it started was Zclassic was not a fork of Zcash. It was actually a whole new chain based upon the Zcash code. So when I talked with Rob Viglione about, and he has a lot of different ideas on privacy and cryptocurrencies working as well, but they're very synergistic ideas. So we found that we were like-minded in thinking about saying we have to, Zclassic, which we were both part of, works well, but we want to make some improvements. And the only way that we could see to do that, because the Zclassic community was a very fractured and individualistic community, was to do a fork of Zclassic. And that was kind of new at the idea, new at the time. We had started this discussion in February of 2017, and one of the engineers on the Zclassic project that we were working with said, we should do a chain split. I had no idea what a chain split was. I was still learning. Most people know it now because they see, what happened with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. That was a chain split. So there's two new chains where there was one. And most commonly that's a fork now. But that was kind of a new thing because we had to come up with a way to do transaction replay protection. There was no way to do that other people had actually written in code at the time.
So one of the things I was quite interested about Horizen, Rolf, is that you have a large team now behind it that's being funded directly through new blocks being kind of created and coins being created through that. But it's not just developers, is it? And sort of infrastructure people. You've got marketing people, and something which was quite interesting. I found it almost a little bit strange at the beginning, was that you have a help desk, so that if people are involved in Horizen, if they have problems with, wallets or setting up nodes or anything like that, you can actually go to a help desk, and that's staffed by people employed by Horizen or volunteers or a mixture, is it?
So one of the things that we realized was it's very difficult actually for new people coming into the marketplace to learn how to use cryptocurrency. So we want to reduce the barriers of entry and reduce the fear and make it easier. So the quickest way that we could think of doing that was to tell people, look, if you download our wallet and do the nodes and do the other things and you run into a problem, we can help you. In fact, we'll have, because we're designed to be an international organization, a 24/7 help desk. So we have a ticketing system. We have, and then just like you'd expect in any organization that provides support to people, over time, not only do we have a ticketing system, but we build up a list of frequently asked questions. We provide documentation resources to reduce the load on the help desk. Right? We don't want to have solve the same problem over and over. Who is that? And fortunately, in the information technology experience that I had, we would do service desks for people. And so this was very straightforward and obvious from my business and my IT experience. And we have so many good people on the team that, I say I get a good idea maybe once every year. But if we have all sorts of people and we set up an environment where everybody's encouraged to come up with ideas to solve the day-to-day issues that they face, we can really iterate and improve rapidly.
Absolutely. I mean, the other thing is you've got a very vibrant Discord group. I've been kind of lurking in there a little bit over the last few days. I really like you do like a weekly kind of call that has members of the team on it, sort of like talking through what's been done, and anybody can kind of jump into that. I jumped in yesterday. I missed the beginning. But I jumped into that. And one of the things I was quite interested about, because obviously when you launched in 2017, prices on the up, all of kind of crypto was doing fantastically. And then obviously the next year, going through 2018, that kind of bear market, how did that influence, the amount of kind of people you can have on the team, the amount of positions that you can afford to, employ really, or kind of like you can afford to do? Because obviously with the fluctuating kind of pricing kind of crypto, did that affect you kind of negatively quite a lot, or?
Yeah, it affected us negatively quite a bit. But yeah, we tried to add people, but not too fast. We also spent the funds as they came in. And you can look back and say, well, you should have known that there was going to be a cyclical market, there was going to be a market cycle, and you should have hedged. And you should have hedged in a basket of currencies so that, when there was a down market, you could, that's really easy to say after you go through the experience. Absolutely. Ahead of it, it's difficult. So could we have hedged better? Probably. A lot of crypto markets could have hedged better. But we also spent the funds in very good ways to be able to expand and grow the project. Absolutely. So during the downturn, I'm sorry, I take a long time to answer questions sometimes. But during the downturn, we had to cut back on all our outside commitments, all our contracts, and then we had to scale back on the people that we hired. So that can be good, it can be bad. When there's a downturn, the people that stick around are the ones that are typically the ones that are most talented and the ones that are most energized, the ones that are most interested. But you mentioned that we would do a public call weekly. And that's part of the philosophy that we've got to say, the Zen Blockchain Foundation, which is the nonprofit that gets the 20% of the new block reward, has to spend the funds responsibly. And so we try to keep everybody informed as to what we're doing. We provide periodically big picture updates of where the funds are spent.
Probably a good time to bring us on to sidechains now.
Yeah, so when we first started, we had the vision of saying that we're going to have an ongoing funding mechanism so that we can have continuous improvement. Privacy is going to be a focus, and we want to make sure that if we're successful and get attacked by whoever might attack us, I don't know, criminal organizations, there's certainly a lot of hacking attempts and other things like that. We want to have a system that is robust and managed by people all over the world. We are able to vote to make decisions. And we want to be able to have private transactions, and we want to be able to pay nodes to operate, because again, that goes back to one of our fundamental economic philosophies. If you want something done, you don't beg people to do it. You provide economic incentives for them to be able to provide it, and let people figure out the most creative ways to do that economic incentive. So we pay people to operate nodes. And nodes are important because that has the whole blockchain history. And if someone, for example, wanted to do a denial of service attack against Horizen, then attacking all the nodes would be the most likely way to do it. So having them distributed all over the world would be great. So we first started putting
30,000, is it? So
yeah, it's about 30,000 nodes, and
that's a lot of nodes compared to most projects.
It is, and we decided, because we found when we're looking for different groups of people that are interested in supporting a project, there's people that are, for example, in European countries that have high electricity costs. They can't mine. They're not software developers. But my experience in the information technology is there's a lot of system administrators and information technology people that want to participate. Think about the guy at the office that helps you with your computer or helps you with the printer or runs the back-end systems. And so we set up specifically a low-cost node for those types of people. So start with 42Zen, because 42 is the answer. If you're familiar with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, another UK reference there. And
where the 42 came from?
That's where it came from. I'm a big science fiction fan. So 42 Zen, look at the market price of Zen right now. It's $5. So $200 basically to get the staking to be able to run a node. So there can be a lot of participation, because you look at, for example, Dash, and it's $100,000, $200,000 to run a node. It really narrows the amount of people that can be involved. We want more people to be involved. And that's why the secure node price is so low.
But I suppose there has to be a balance between, if it's too low, and we've seen this with a lot of masternode projects that have really bled out in price, I think, throughout 2018, where it was economically viable for people to run masternodes at the beginning of the year. By the end of the year, in some cases, even what you're paying for VPS is more than what your return is in kind of coins. So there must be that sort of like, I suppose, a sort of toss up between it has to be economically viable for people to want to continue to do it, but at the other hand, you want as many people and as many geographically diverse people to be running them as possible.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be managed because just like with mining, there's a natural balance to that. So when the cost becomes too high, people shut down their nodes. But the problem is, like I mentioned, we had that research project with IOHK, and they came up with a voting system, and we were ready to implement that voting system on the main chain. And then we said, well, what else do we want to do? Well, we want to track nodes and pay them, just decentralized. We want to be able to, we looked at the amount of things that we wanted to accomplish, and we could say, well, this is going to bog down the main chain and it's going to bloat it. So we took a step back, and like I said, earlier, we like to operate from first principles and said, what is a good way to accomplish these other things in a decentralized fashion without bloating the main chain? Because that's one of the issues with actually the shielded transactions that we inherited from Zcash, is they're much larger transactions, and it causes actually a problem with the block filling of transaction fees that can potentially be an issue, because there's large shielded transactions, the private transaction, and then there's small transparent transactions. So we backed up and said, well, we don't need to do these on the main chain. We need to do these in a decentralized way. So let's take a look at doing these with sidechains. And we looked for sidechain projects that we could copy and operate on them, but they all rely on a trusted party of nodes to return the funds to the main chain. So not necessarily everybody knows how a sidechain works, but you can lock an amount of cryptocurrency in a multi-party, multi-signature contract on the main chain. That's one way of doing it. And then operate things on the side chain and then unlock those funds on the main chain. But nobody had done a side chain implementation that didn't require trust for the people that would decide who those funds get returned to when they're unlocked. So I'm not going to take credit for any of this. So Rob and our chief architect, Alberto Garofalo, came up with the idea of doing sidechains, as well as the new sidechain architecture, which can do the forward transfer of funds to the sidechain and the backward transfer of funds in a decentralized fashion that doesn't require a trusted set of nodes. So that's the big new technology that we're doing.
So this is the big difference between your sidechains and those potentially on other projects, are that it's completely trustless.
Right, and we're already starting the implementation of that in parallel with, so Alberto has worked with the scientists at IOHK, as well as we have fortunately been able to hire a good development and design team. It takes a while to build teams that have good people that work together that are able to produce. It really takes well over a year to build a team. It takes a good 2 to 3 years to build a team and produce good software code that does something new and different. And I'm not sure that people that are not software developers don't understand actually how long it takes to build things.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then once you build it, it has to be supportable and it has to be supported. So yes, we have a fundamental new and different way of doing a sidechain implementation that's trustless. That allows us to scale. So it allows us to take these original ideas of the voting system to be able to decide where the project goes in the future and what teams are going to be hired to do the development and marketing, things like that. That's going to be one side chain. We're going to move the private transactions from the main chain to a side chain. So we can actually have multiple ways of doing private transactions. Zcash continues to innovate on the private types of transactions using ZK snarks and zero knowledge proof. There are other ways of doing private transactions. Certainly Monero has showed that, as well as the Mimblewimble with Gran and Beam. So we can have actually multiple side chains. The third thing that we're going to do is track the nodes and pay them, again, on a decentralized side chain. So what I expect in the future, as we add additional requirements onto the people that are running nodes, so our blockchain will grow. But if people want to, in the Horizon project, want to be able to run super nodes, which is a larger, more robust nodes, they will have to run these three basic sidechain applications that run the system, and they'll have to have more powerful servers, and they'll have to have more storage. So that's another big part, is we want to incentivize people to develop their own sidechains and run them on Zen. So the system that we've set up is if the software developer creates a useful application, and it's tough to talk about it in the, say, a sidechain, okay? Here's the way you should think about it. It's its own blockchain with its own application interface. So what we're doing is we have a foundational system, the Zen blockchain, that already has a token that's traded, that has a value, and we can build additional blockchains on top of it. So think if you create an app and you put it on the Google or the Apple Play Store, the developer of the app makes money, right? Same thing with our sidechains. The developer of the app can design into the app that they get a small percentage of the funds that are transferred forward and backward to and from the sidechain. And then the developer of the app can also, because you need to get nodes to actually run those private sidechains. So the application developer can design in there so anybody who's going to run his sidechain or her sidechain application gets paid also. The main chain doesn't need to know what happens on the sidechain. It has well-defined ways of sending funds to the sidechain and well-defined ways of returning funds from the sidechain, but there can be different informational type elements on there that that the main chain doesn't know about.
So as long as you have a standardized way of getting Zen into and out of those kind of side chains, so you'll have some kind of like standardized interface that anybody can kind of use. But then what happens on the kind of side chains is fundamentally irrelevant to the kind of main chain. All your
That's exactly right.
Coming on and off, and that's it.
That's exactly right. So you can think of any type of application that you want run on a distributed computing infrastructure. It can be done on a Horizen sidechain. So we're thinking big on these sidechain type applications. We're not looking at just small funding applications. We're looking for a complete, economically viable system on a distributed blockchain that operates worldwide, that has a value mechanism already created, and we're working to incentivize developers to develop their own applications to run on their own private sidechain.
And in terms of sidechains, what kind of timescales have you got for kind of launch? I know you're in alpha at the moment, aren't you, currently?
So you said, what are the time frame for it? Well, I expect the time frame for a usable sidechain to be in first, second quarter of 2019. Sorry, did I say first and second quarter of 2019? I meant first and second quarter of 2020, right near the end of 2019 here. And then moving things to the sidechain probably by the end of 2020. Many projects, they try to find people that are in the crypto space and convert them to their project. To me, that's not a net win for anybody. What we're working to do is bring new people into the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And we said, well, how do we do that? First of all, we have to provide a reason for them to join us, and then they can learn more about it. And then we have to provide lots of resources for them as they grow their knowledge base. So we have our Zen Academy. If you can go to our horizen.global website and go to the Zen Academy.
In the description below.
Yeah, you can learn all about the basics of blockchain technology and why it works and how it's important. So we've done words on that. We have videos in production because a lot of people like videos, and then we do language translations. So we're providing people an introduction to cryptocurrency and blockchain and why it's important to help get new users on. We have an easy-to-use, beautiful wallet that is, we'll have those on mobile soon as well. And then, like you mentioned earlier, we have the help desk, and we do have a very active Telegram and Discord. So we're working to get new people because, frankly, for a lot of cryptocurrency part, countries like the UK and the United States aren't really the best place for them to start. The best place for cryptocurrency to start is places where their government money doesn't work. With these people that don't have good money, how do we get them interested in the first place? And that was a conundrum for a while until our marketing team came and said, we get a little bit of action on the faucet. Let's work more on the faucet. So we have a gamified faucet that people that don't have anything that want an introduction to crypto, they can go there every day and get a small amount of Zen.
And that's real grassroots, bringing people in that have, probably wouldn't have any idea what kind of crypto is, no way of buying crypto, no way of kind of getting hold of crypto. So quickly before we wrap up, do you have any predictions for 2020? Not necessarily Horizon, but the crypto markets in general. Do you see?
Well, I watch them very closely because certainly the Horizon team size is dependent on the price of the Horizon prize. And the mining business that I do, me and my partners, we run a few thousand miners, mining machines, and we have to sell those for sell the production for power. So we have to kind of figure out, okay, what's going on and what's going to happen with the price.
I was actually watching one of your videos, the container mining one earlier. I'll put a link to your YouTube channel because you've got, what's it called? Block Operations, is it?
Yeah, blockoperations.com. That's where I teach new people how to mine and show people you don't have to be a huge company to mine or just be a small. You can actually build yourself a nice little side business that brings you in money if you're fortunate to be in a place that has low electricity costs.
I mean, it'd be great to sit down maybe again for half an hour or so and talk, purely mining things at some point if you've got the time. But
would love to. Yeah, in fact, I have so much that I'd like to share about mining that I started a podcast on that and providing information about it. But yes, to your question of the prediction of the market. So watch that very closely. And I follow a lot of the technical analysis and investor talk as well. So to me, it appears with Bitcoin being at about I'll talk in dollars, so $7,000 price, I think it's going to go down here over the next month or two, probably to maybe about $6,000. And then it's going to turn around and in 2020 hit a new high. And I think that new price high is going to be around $40,000 to $50,000 during the course of 2020. That's my feel. Those are the numbers that I'm operating on for the prediction of the mining business and buying new equipment and different things like that.
Interesting. Good to know. I think I'm quite similar to you. I think possibly we've seen the low maybe last month for this kind of year. I think maybe we'll see, I think possibly even a slightly slower build next year, maybe back towards 20,000 towards the end of the year. But I think that will then trigger that next quite rapid kind of move up. But I think, anything 20 to 40,000 would be great.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a certain amount of money that's coming into buying Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies every month, and when Bitcoin halving happens, if the same amount of money comes in, then the price of Bitcoin has to double to be able to absorb that same amount of monthly money. I know that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but that's why people believe that the price goes up after halving.
Yeah. How much do you think the halving price is kind of baked in already?
Well, that could be. But when you look at the actual economics of the miners and the production and the new money coming in, you can say it's baked in, but there's a certain amount of new Bitcoin that gets produced every day, just like there's a certain amount of Zen that gets produced every day. And for price to maintain constant, that amount of new production has to be purchased. So you can say there's people that think the price is going to go up and think the price is going to go down, but something still needs to be done with the new Bitcoin that those miners are selling every day. So that's where the new money coming in has to suck that up. And after the halving, there's going to be half as much new Bitcoin created every day. So if there's buying pressure. There's buying pressure and selling pressure. And there's going to be an imbalance, but that imbalance doesn't happen until after the halving. Of course, you look at the Litecoin price as an old Litecoin miner, I'm sure you track that. Yeah. And there was a spike in price 5 months before the halving, and then it went down throughout that. Yeah. Now, Litecoin price is languishing. So who knows what's going to happen? I mean, the
Litecoin price is not that much different from when I got into mining back in 2013 when it hit that high of about $50. I mean, it seems crazy when you see what Bitcoin's done in that kind of time frame.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, I quite like, I have sort of a fondness for Litecoin because it was probably the first coin I ever kind of mined. But I do see it's almost like a bit of a test bed for Bitcoin. I think in the long term, it's like, I don't think it's going to die by any stretch, but I don't think its idea of like, it was always going on about it was silver to Bitcoin's gold and all of that. And, their ideal was getting to like a tenth of the price. I don't see that ever.
Yeah. But, I also like what the Bitcoin Cash team is doing. They're going in a different direction than what Bitcoin is doing. There's more and more separation between the goals of the project. Mm-hmm. And I think they're both viable directions. I don't know which is going to win. So instead of trying to make a prediction and base my entire action on those predictions, I prefer to try to look at what all the different things that might happen is and set up actions that we can succeed no matter what happens.
Absolutely. And with the exception of Horizon and kind of Bitcoin, are there any projects that you really like? I'm not necessarily talking about kind of price action, but are there things that you think they're doing interesting kind of work?
Oh, you know what? That reminds me. I need to redo in my podcast. I did this on a video, but what are the things that I look for in a project to mine? Because there's a lot of things that I look for, but basically, I like to look for projects that are doing new and fundamental, different technology that has application, and they have a team that has the ability to implement the technology, and they have the funding. So if you look at, okay, what are the organizations that meet that criteria? Of course, Bitcoin's off on its own. It's funded by old folks that have been in the system for a while. Zcash. Zcash is a wonderful project, great engineers. They just fully secured their ongoing funding for after their halvening. They're starting to publicize that vote said there's going to be 20% of the Zcash that goes towards development. So I think Zcash is very exciting. I like the Cardano project, doing something new and different with staking and smart contracts, and they're doing it in a methodical process. We've worked with IOHK and Charles Hoskinson for years. They have really smart people on the scientific side, and they have really good software development processes and teams. So that's a project I really like.
Yeah, I like Cardano. I think that the whole idea of kind of peer review and not kind of rushing out with stuff, but sort of like trying to be sort of best of breed almost is quite an interesting kind of like take on what's kind of happened before.
I like Steem. Steem is one of the few blockchain projects that a lot of people use and provides an alternative on the social media things. They've been doing a lot of new and different things.
I also like that. I think basic attention token. I think what they're doing with the Brave browser is fantastic. I'm using the Brave browser more and more. And the amount of publishers they now have on, the amount of Twitter accounts, YouTube channels, websites, and just users using it every day, particularly with the launch, I think, on Android and iOS. I think that's a really big project. I think that's going to be a fantastic project.
I completely agree with you. Brave, that's a basic attention token. Neat project, doing something different, and obviously they keep rolling out improvements, so they have a team that knows what they're doing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time, Rolf. It's been great to speak to you. It really has.
Thanks, Dave. Great talking with you. I enjoy this a lot too.